April 17, 1945. A muddy forest clearing near Iserlohn, Germany. The world has shrunk to the smell of wet pine needles and ozone. Rain falls in a relentless, gray sheet, turning the rich soil of the Ruhr Valley into a thick, greedy paste that sucks at the boots of the living and clings to the uniforms of the dead. For 21-year-old Hannah Vogel, a signals auxiliary with the remnants of Army Group B, the war is no longer a grand map in a command bunker. It is the hiss of static in her headphones, a sound like a dying breath that has replaced all other transmissions. The field telephone is silent. The teleprinter has spat out its last garbled message, its ribbon torn and ink dry. For 3 days, her unit, a communications detachment that once felt like the central nervous system of a vast, fighting organism, has been deaf, dumb, and blind. The crump of American artillery has become a constant, percussive rhythm, a heartbeat for the chaos that now surrounds them. It isn't close enough to be terrifying anymore. It's just there. A feature of the landscape, like the dripping trees and the low, pregnant clouds. You can feel the disintegration. It's in the way the men move, their shoulders slumped not just with the weight of their packs but with the crushing burden of futility. The officers, once crisp and commanding, now cluster together, their voices low and ragged. Their authority has evaporated with the smoke of the last burning half-track. There are no more orders, only suggestions. No more strategy, only survival. Hannah sits on an ammunition crate inside a waterlogged tent, her fingers numb. Her Luftwaffe gray uniform is stained with mud and something darker she refuses to identify. She keeps the headphones on, a useless habit. The static is a comfort, a barrier against the unnerving silence from her own side and the growing noise from the other. She listens to the ghost frequencies, twisting the dial. Nothing. Just the crackle of a collapsing universe. A young private, no older than 16, stumbles into the tent. His face is a pale mask of shock, his helmet gone. He looks at Hannah, his eyes wide and unfocused. "They're here," he whispers, the words barely audible over the drumming rain. "The Americans. Down the road." He doesn't say it with fear. He says it with a profound, hollow exhaustion, as if announcing the arrival of a long overdue train. Hannah slowly removes the headphones. The sudden absence of the static is jarring. The world rushes in, the drip 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 of water from a tear in the canvas, the distant, metallic clank of something heavy, the low murmur of men's voices outside. Her commanding officer, a Hauptmann with a face like worn leather, pushes aside the tent flap. He doesn't look at her. He looks past her, at the useless equipment. "It's over, Fräulein Vogel," he says, his voice flat. "Destroy what you can." But there is nothing left to destroy. The codes are meaningless. The frequencies are dead. The great machine of the Wehrmacht has ground to a halt, its gears stripped, its fuel spent. She picks up the logbook, its pages swollen with damp, the neat columns of her handwriting now blurred into abstract patterns. She stares at it for a moment, a record of messages that no longer matter, sent to divisions that no longer exist. Outside, the sound is closer now. A deep, guttural rumble that vibrates through the soles of her boots. It's the sound of an engine, powerful and confident. It is the sound of the end. The Hauptmann takes a white handkerchief from his pocket. It looks impossibly clean against the grime of his uniform. He walks out of the tent, and Hannah follows. The clearing is filled with gray-green figures emerging from the trees, hands held tentatively in the air. They are shadows, ghosts of soldiers. And then it appears, nosing through the pines. An M4 Sherman tank, its olive drab hull slick with rain, a stark white star painted on its flank. It seems impossibly large, an alien thing in this German forest. The turret swivels with a low whine, its long 76mm cannon sweeping over them, indifferent. American soldiers, their movements fluid and economical, fan out behind it. They are tall, well-fed, their M1 Garand rifles held at a casual port arms. They don't shout. They don't need to. Their presence is absolute. Hannah stands frozen, the damp logbook still clutched in her hand. One of the Americans, a sergeant with a square jaw and tired eyes, gestures with his rifle. He's pointing at her, at the book. She understands. She lets it fall. It lands with a soft thud in the mud, pages splayed open to the weeping sky. The ink begins to run immediately, washing away the last records of a forgotten war. The sergeant nods, then looks away, already focused on the next prisoner, the next task in this immense, logistical process of defeat. For him, she is just one more piece to be cleared from the board. For Hannah Vogel, the static has finally stopped. And the silence that follows is the most terrifying sound she has ever heard. The road to the west is not a road. It is a riverbed, and the river is made of men. Thousands of them. Tens of thousands. A slow-moving, silent current of Feldgrau and camouflage, flowing from the collapsed heart of the Ruhr pocket toward the Rhine. Hannah Vogel is a single drop in this vast, gray-green ocean of defeat. The first few hours after the capture were a blur of shouted commands in a foreign tongue, a being herded and counted, of a sudden, shocking intimacy with the enemy. The American GIs were not the horned devils of propaganda. They were young men, chewing gum, their faces a mixture of boredom, curiosity, and a weary professionalism. They seemed less like conquerors and more like overworked administrators processing a colossal, unexpected delivery. Now, 2 days into the march, a strange lethargy has set in. The initial shock has given way to a dull, rhythmic plodding. Left foot, right foot. One step closer to an unknown destination. There is no conversation. The shame is too heavy, the exhaustion too deep. You look at the faces around you, the boy from the Hitler Youth, his cheeks still soft with youth but his eyes 100 years old, the grizzled veteran of the Eastern Front, his face a roadmap of forgotten campaigns, now a blank slate. They are no longer soldiers. They are just cargo. The identity of a uniform is gone. The Americans have taken their weapons, their belts, their personal effects. Hannah's rank and role as a specialist are meaningless. She is just a woman in a column of men, her presence an anomaly that draws brief, curious glances from the guards but little else. The hunger has started. A dull, persistent ache in the pit of her stomach that gnaws away at thought, leaving only the basic, animalistic focus on the next step, the next mouthful of air. They are given a single K-ration biscuit in the morning and a canteen of chlorinated water. It is enough to keep them moving. Nothing more. Their keeper is Corporal James O'Connell, 106th Military Police Platoon. He is 19 years old, from Toledo, Ohio, and 6 months ago he was terrified, hunkered down in the snows of the Ardennes as German artillery tore his division apart. Now, he rides on the fender of a Willis Jeep, his M1 rifle resting across his knees, watching the endless column of prisoners shuffle past. He feels no triumph. He feels overwhelmed. The sheer scale of it is impossible to comprehend. They had been told they were winning the war, but victory wasn't supposed to look like this. It wasn't supposed to be this quiet, this pathetic. He watches them, trying to see the supermen, the fanatical Nazis he'd been warned about. He sees hollow cheeks, vacant eyes, and the shuffling gait of utter exhaustion. He sees boys who should be in school and old men who should be with their grandchildren. And then he sees her. A woman. Her hair is matted with rain and mud, but she walks with a straightness that stands out, a remnant of a discipline that has not yet completely broken. She catches his eye for a second, her expression unreadable, before looking back down at the mud. The sight unnerves him. It makes this whole, sordid business personal. It's easier when they are a faceless mass, a number on a report. A single face, a woman's face, makes it real. The guards have a name for this. They call it the procession of ghosts. Because that's what they look like. Spectres haunting their own ruined country. The German civilians who watch from the windows of their shattered homes do so in silence. There are no tears, no shouts of defiance. Just a stunned, passive observation, as if they are watching a funeral cortege for an entire nation. The prisoners do not look at them. They keep their eyes fixed on the ground, on the boots of the man in front of them, as if acknowledging the gaze of their own people would be the final, unbearable humiliation. As dusk falls on the third day, they arrive. The column crests a low hill, and there it is, spread across the floodplain of the Rhine. Remagen. Not the town, but the camp. It isn't a camp in any traditional sense. There are no barracks, no buildings. There is only the sky, the mud, and the wire. Miles and miles of barbed wire, stretched between thick wooden posts, enclosing vast rectangular pens. Searchlights on tall towers are already beginning to cut through the twilight, their cold beams sweeping across the enormous, desolate space. Inside the pens, thousands upon thousands of figures huddle together for warmth, their shapes indistinct in the gloom. It looks like a photograph of damnation. The column halts. The gates to one of the pens swing open. The American guards, efficient and impersonal, begin to channel the river of men inside. Hannah feels a primal surge of dread. This is not a temporary holding area. This is a destination. As she is pushed forward by the sheer pressure of the crowd, she looks up at one of the guard towers. A silhouette stands against the dying light, a lone figure watching the human tide pour into the cage. For a fleeting moment, she thinks it's the same young corporal from the jeep. A watcher, separate and safe, looking down on a world that has been stripped of everything but mud and wire. And then the gate clangs shut behind her, the sound of finality echoing across the vast, silent field. The first week in the Rheinwiesenlager at Remagen is a lesson in reduction. Life is stripped down to its most brutal and essential components: water, food, and shelter. All are scarce. Shelter is the most immediate concern. There are no tents, no barracks, no roofs of any kind. The prisoners are given nothing. They are simply turned loose into a vast, muddy field under an open, often weeping, sky. The veterans, the men who survived Stalingrad and the long retreat from the east, know what to do. They begin to dig. With their bare hands, with a sharpened piece of wood, with the lid of a discarded can, they claw at the earth, scooping out shallow burrows, foxholes in which they can curl up to escape the wind and the relentless rain. Hannah finds herself taken in by a small group of older men, members of the Volkssturm, the People's Storm. They are grandfathers, mechanics, and school teachers, and they see in her a daughter or a granddaughter. They dig for her, their cracked and bleeding fingers scraping away the mud to create a shallow hollow, barely large enough for her to lie in. They cover it with a tattered piece of canvas scavenged from God knows where. It is a miserable, damp hole, but it is hers. It is a space in a world that has become a featureless cage. Time loses its structure. The sun rises, the sun sets. The days are marked only by the two great rituals, the morning roll call and the evening ration line. Roll call is a purgatory of standing in the mud for hours while the American guards, impatient and cold, conduct their endless count. Men, weakened by hunger and dysentery, collapse in the ranks. They are dragged to the side, their fate uncertain. The count is everything. The prisoners are no longer men with names and histories, they are numbers, tally marks on a clipboard. Hannah Vogel is one unit among 300,000. The ration line is a slow, agonizing crawl toward a spoonful of powdered potato soup, a small piece of hard bread, or a single, greasy sausage. Fights break out, brief, pathetic scuffles born of desperation. But mostly, there is just a resigned, animalistic patience. Hannah eats her portion slowly, mechanically, trying to make it last, but the hunger is a living thing inside her, a beast that is never satisfied. She drinks the chlorinated water from the standpipes, knowing it is the cause of the sickness that sweeps through the camp, but thirst is a more immediate tyrant than the fear of disease. From his post in the guard tower, Corporal O'Connell watches the slow-motion tragedy unfold. He has a pair of binoculars, and sometimes, against regulations, he uses them to scan the faces in the teeming mass below. He sees the life draining out of them day by day. He sees the hope in their eyes curdle into a dull, vacant stare. The sheer human density is staggering. The cage is a living, breathing entity, a carpet of humanity that shifts and murmurs. He can smell it from his tower, the scent of unwashed bodies, of sickness, of mud, and despair. It's a smell that gets into his clothes and his hair, a smell he fears he will never wash out. He spots the woman, Hannah, occasionally. She keeps to herself, a small, still point in the swirling chaos. He sees the old men looking out for her, giving her a piece of their bread, shielding her from the worst of the jostling in the ration line. It is a small, flickering ember of humanity in a place designed to extinguish it. The sight troubles him. It complicates the neat narrative he has been given. These are not the enemy. They are the defeated. And he is their jailer. He is responsible for this. The thought sits like a cold stone in his stomach. Inside the cage, the world outside the wire ceases to exist. It is a distant, abstract concept. The war, the Reich, Germany itself, all of it feels like a dream from another lifetime. Hannah's past has been erased. Her skills as a signals operator are as useless as a book of poetry. All that matters is the next meal, a dry place to sleep, the hope of seeing the sun. She talks to no one about her life before. No one asks. The past is a luxury they can no longer afford. They are bound together not by a shared history or a common cause, but by a shared present of mud and wire and gnawing hunger. One evening, as the light fades, a man near her burrow begins to weep. Not loudly, but in quiet, racking sobs. He is a boy, no older than 17, his face still round with adolescent fat that is rapidly melting away. No one comforts him. No one speaks to him. They simply listen, each man alone in his own private darkness, the boy's grief a stark expression of the unspoken misery that unites them all. Hannah pulls the canvas over her head, trying to block out the sound, but it is impossible. It is the sound of the cage itself. The sound of 300,000 souls realizing, perhaps for the first time, that they have been utterly and completely abandoned. The fighting may have stopped somewhere out there, but in here, the suffering has just begun. By the first week of May, something has changed. It is not a visible change, not an order read over a loudspeaker or a new policy enacted by the American administration. It is a change in the air, a shift in the acoustic fabric of their world. The artillery has stopped. For weeks, the distant, rhythmic thunder of the guns to the east had been the camp's lullaby, a constant reminder that somewhere, a war was still being fought. Now, there is only the wind, the rain, and the low hum of the camp's generator. The skies, once streaked with the contrails of Allied bombers and fighters, are empty. Utterly, unnervingly empty. This new silence is more profound than any noise. It seeps into the mud, into the prisoner's bones. It is a vacuum, and into that vacuum rushes the most corrosive and volatile of all human commodities, rumor. The whispers start in the ration lines, pass from one foxhole to another in the dead of night. Berlin has fallen. The Führer is dead, a martyr's death in the chancellery. No, the Führer is alive, leading a final, glorious counterattack from the Alpine redoubt. A new wonder weapon, the V3, has been unleashed, and it is turning the tide. The Americans and the British are going to rearm the Wehrmacht to fight their new enemy, the Soviets. Each rumor is a brief, intoxicating spark of hope in the darkness, and each is extinguished just as quickly, leaving the despair even deeper than before. The uncertainty is a form of torture more refined than starvation. Is it over? Is there a home to go back to? A family to find? Or is this it? Is this cage the rest of their lives, a slow, anonymous death in the mud of their own country? The not knowing is a madness. It pits man against man. Fights erupt over scraps of information that are likely nothing but lies. Hannah Vogel feels the change more acutely than most. Her entire being had been trained to interpret signals, to find meaning in the ether. Now, the ether is dead, and she is left to decipher the shifting expressions on the guards' faces, the tone of their voices, the way they carry their rifles. They seem different. More relaxed. The hard, combat-ready edge they possessed upon arrival has softened. They are still guards, but their posture is that of administrators, not warriors. There is less shouting, more routine. Something fundamental has ended. Corporal O'Connell knows exactly what has ended. On the evening of May 8, he was in the command tent when the teletype machine chattered to life, spitting out a message from SHAEF headquarters. Unconditional surrender. Victory in Europe. The war is over. There was no cheering in the tent, no wild celebration. Just a few quiet handshakes, a shared cigarette, and a deep, collective sigh of relief. The job wasn't finished, not by a long shot, but the killing was. He felt a profound sense of release, a lightness he hadn't realized he was missing. But then he went back to the tower and looked down at the 300,000 men and women in the cages below. They knew nothing. They were still living in the war, trapped in its final, miserable chapter, while he stood in the first moments of peace. The knowledge created a chasm between them that felt wider and more impassable than the barbed wire. He was now the keeper of their hope, the gatekeeper of their future, and he had been told to say nothing. The official announcement would be made when the High Command deemed it appropriate, when the logistics were in place. So he watches them, this city of the lost, and he feels a strange and unwelcome sense of guilt. He sees them arguing, their faces animated with false hope or dark despair, and he knows the simple truth that would end their torment. He sees Hannah, thinner now, her face sharp with angles of hunger and exhaustion, her eyes constantly scanning the perimeter, searching for a sign. She looks less like a soldier and more like a lost animal, cornered and confused. One afternoon, a new prisoner, captured in the last dying days of the fighting, is thrown into her enclosure. He is full of fresh news. He saw a newspaper in a commandant's office. "It's true," he says. "Hitler is dead. Dönitz is the new leader. Surrender is imminent. Or perhaps it has already happened." His story is fragmented, disjointed, but it carries the ring of truth. A nervous energy ripples through the cage. The question, the one question that has been hovering unspoken for days, becomes a palpable presence. It hangs in the air, heavy and fragile. Hannah feels it solidify within her. The need to know becomes a physical force, an imperative more powerful than hunger or fear. She has to find someone. An American. An officer. Anyone who can look her in the eye and give her the one thing she needs more than bread or water. An answer. She pushes herself up from the mud, a singular, desperate purpose finally cutting through the fog of her exhaustion. The administrative tent stands just outside the wire of Penji, a drab canvas island in a sea of mud. It is a place of clipboards, typewriters, and weary American officers trying to impose order on the chaos of 300,000 surrendered lives. This is where the world of the keepers and the world of the kept come closest to touching. For most prisoners, it is a place of fear and bureaucracy. For Hannah Vogel, on the afternoon of May 11, 1945, it is the only place an answer might be found. She stands near the gate, her body trembling with a mixture of cold, hunger, and a raw, nervous energy. She has been waiting for an hour, watching the guards come and go. She doesn't have a plan. She only has the question, a single, polished stone of a question that she has turned over and over in her mind until it is smooth and heavy. Corporal James O'Connell is coming off his shift. His shoulders ache, and the persistent dampness has settled deep in his bones. All he wants is a hot coffee and a moment of quiet before his next duty. As he walks past the gate of Penji, he sees her. The woman from the column. He recognizes her instantly, though she is much changed. Her uniform hangs on her skeletal frame like a shroud. Her face is gaunt, her skin stretched tight over her cheekbones, giving her an expression of constant, painful surprise. Her eyes, wide and dark, are fixed on him. He tries to walk past, to ignore her. It is the unwritten rule. Do not engage. They are prisoners, numbers. You are a guard. The wire is there for a reason, both physical and psychological. But she takes a step forward, her hand gripping the wire. Other prisoners, sensing a shift in the camp's static rhythm, stop what they are doing. A small, silent audience begins to gather. "Bid," she says. Her voice is a dry, rasping whisper, the sound of vocal cords long unused. It is barely audible, but in the sudden quiet, it carries like a shout. O'Connell stops. He turns to face her. He sees the utter absence of defiance in her posture. There is no anger, no accusation. There is only a terrifying fragility, as if a harsh word or a sudden movement could cause her to shatter. He looks into her eyes and sees the question there, fully formed, before she even speaks it. He knows what she is going to ask. And he knows he is not supposed to answer. She summons the last of her strength. She pushes herself away from the wire and stands, unsteady, in the small, clear space before him. Her body sways. Her gaze never leaves his. She draws a shallow, ragged breath. Ist es vorbei? The German words hang in the damp air. To O'Connell, who has picked up fragments of the language over the past year, the meaning is instantly, devastatingly clear. He sees her lips form the phrase again, this time in halting, textbook English, a plea for confirmation across the barrier of language. Is it over? It is not a question about a battle. It is a question about existence. About suffering. A plea for an ending. It is the single, distilled cry of a continent that has bled for 6 long years. In that moment, Hannah Vogel is not a German, not an enemy. She is every person who has ever been caught in the grinding gears of war, praying for the machine to simply stop. O'Connell opens his mouth to speak, but no words come out. What can he say? Yes. What does yes mean to this woman, in this place? Does it mean she can go home? Does it mean her family is alive? Does it mean the hunger will stop? His silence is an answer of its own. He sees a flicker of understanding in her eyes, a confirmation of the truth she already suspected. And for her, that is enough. The tension that has held her upright for weeks, for months, finally snaps. Her eyes roll back slightly. Her knees buckle. She does not fall so much as fold, a slow, boneless collapse into the mud. It is not dramatic. It is quiet. A final, silent surrender of a body that has nothing left to give. 2 other MPs move forward, their faces impassive. They lift her limp form, their movements practiced, efficient. They will take her to the infirmary, another number to be processed. The crowd of prisoners watching from behind the wire disperses, melting back into the anonymous mass of the cage. The moment is over. But for Corporal O'Connell, it is not. He stands frozen, the woman's question echoing in the vast silence of his mind. Is it over? He looks from the empty space where she stood to the endless rows of cages stretching toward the horizon. He looks at the gray sky, the gray mud, the gray faces. He knows the papers have been signed. The guns are silent. The armies have stopped marching. But as he stands there, a 19-year-old boy from Ohio who has seen the very end of the world, he understands a profound and terrible truth. The war may be over. But the suffering is not. And for so many, it will never be.